Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It is Season 3, Episode 44. The Pittsburgh Steelers moved to 3-2-1 ahead of their bye week, which has technically been all of this week. We're broadcasting a little late this week due to the fact that we had a little more time and I've been a little under the weather. You might not be able to hear it, but my voice isn't quite all there right now. So I guess it comes at a good time. The Steelers, after starting 0-1-1 on the season, have finished 3-1 over their last 4 games, heading into the bye with a divisional win, 28-21 over the Bengals in dramatic fashion. This was an exciting game to watch, Austin. I'm sure you would agree with me, but what were your quick takeaways after this game?
Well, the offensive line has played lights out the past 2 weeks. They really stepped it up. Special teams was the worst unit in this game by far, and the outside linebackers are so inconsistent. But luckily, the defensive line stepped up in this game. What were your quick takeaways from this game?
Well, much like the Patriots seem to always have their way with the Steelers continue to own and have their way with the Bengals. Cincinnati just has one win against the Steelers in Paul Brown Stadium this decade, and they've only beaten the Steelers 3 times this decade as well. The last one coming at home in 2015 after Ben Roethlisberger returned from injury. So the Bengals haven't been able to beat the Steelers at all, and certainly not at home. The defense continued to show improvement this week. Over the last few weeks, we've seen them get a little bit better after struggling a lot early out of the gate, but concerning trends have remained, and I'll get into those later. Finally, James Conner continues to impress, and Vince Williams, who returned from injury this past week. The bye week comes at a good time. Another one you have to think about is Ben Roethlisberger and his elbow. So, all things considered, the Steelers are a pretty healthy unit coming into the bye week. So that's a good thing, a good sign going forward. So, X factors and bold predictions for this past game. I'll just come right out with mine, Austin. My bold predictions were all off. I didn't have any of them really close at all. My X factor on defense was Artie Burns, and he was an X factor in the sense that his play really did contribute to the result in certain aspects. His poor play led the Bengals to nearly pulling this one out for their end. Jesse James, on the other hand, was a non-factor for the most part. He did have 5 receptions, but they only went for 25 yards, and he didn't make a ton of big plays down the field outside of a nice outstretched grab on a 3rd down. So it was a pretty quiet day for both of my X factors. Not a lot of positives to take from them, but still a couple of nice plays as well. What about your X factors? Who were they and how'd they perform?
Well, there were Ramon Foster, and then my other one was Terrell Edmonds. I was very happy with Ramon Foster's play in this one. He did a great job blocking. However, if I was going for the biggest difference maker on the line, I should have chosen Marquise Pouncey. But I was very happy with Ramon Foster's play nonetheless. On the other side, my X factor was Terrell Edmonds, and he wasn't really a difference maker at all. He had 3 tackles, nothing crazy. Then moving to my bold predictions, I was close on my weird one where I predicted the Steelers wouldn't get an offsides encroachment, illegal hit into the face, or offense or defensive pass interference, but Artie Burns ruined that. Then Ryan Switzer had a bad day, as I had predicted him to go over 100 yards receiving. And I had previously mentioned Terrell Edmonds had a quiet day, so he didn't get his big day that I predicted either. So those are my X factors and bold predictions for that game.
All right. The Steelers offense put up 28 total points in this game. It wasn't the conventional way, not just 4 touchdowns in this one. Kind of an up and down day, but they finished off the game pretty well. So what were your thoughts on the offense? Take me through their performance.
Well, I want to start with the offensive line. As I already mentioned, this is 2 straight weeks of amazing play from them. This was just incredible. Not only did they keep Geno Atkins in check, they kept everyone on the Bengals defense in check, not allowing a single sack and only allowing 1 quarterback hit in total. That's incredible playing from all of them. Not only that, though, they only allowed 3 tackles for a loss, so they were pretty dominant in the run game, too. If I had to pick who had the best performance, I'm going to have to give it to Pouncey. I felt like he was tasked the hardest job of the day, really being right in front of Geno Atkins most of the time. But I saw him out there getting out in front to make blocks upfield. So for a guy a lot of people are calling past his prime or starting to fall, he looks great out there to me. he was part of the reason James Conner's day was so great. While Conner didn't offer that much to the air with 4 catches for 18 yards, he had a lot on the ground, rushing 19 times for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. He just looks so great out there. I think my favorite play from him in this game was when he barreled forward, throwing off Perfect. Oh my gosh, I can't speak today. Off Perfect and Bates at around an 8-yard gain, and then proceeded to get 8 more yards after throwing off both those defenders. But moving on from the running backs, onto the receivers, I thought the top was really high, and then everyone else was non-existent. Obviously, Juju and Brown had great days, combining for 12 catches, 216 yards, a touchdown, and a 2-point conversion. But after them, the other active wide receivers didn't really do anything. I mean, Switzer had 1 catch for 7 yards on his sole target, and Justin Hunter had a key block on the Antonio Brown touchdown. And, I mean, if you will, some will call it controversial, but it was a good block nonetheless. But James Washington didn't get a catch in his very limited snaps either, and neither did Hunter. Luckily, the tight ends really made up for this, the slack that the wide receivers had. It's weird to think, but the tight ends have probably been the best unit the Steelers have had, especially after how we thought of them coming into the season. I mean, Vance has a fumbling problem. There's no denying that. It's getting pretty bad out here. It's going to bite the Steelers another one of these days because it bit them against the Ravens, but it's going to come back again. I'm pretty confident about that. But we saw it again in this game, and luckily Juju Smith-Schuster was there to recover to allow the Steelers to get a field goal still. But other than that, I have no complaints about this unit. To make up for his fumbling problem, Vance has made it up by getting big gains where he runs over people for extra yards. He did that in the nice 26-yard gain on this one, but all the tight ends contributed big when you put them all together. Vance led them in yards and catches, but James had 5 catches, and then Grimble had 2, including a big 22-yard gain. Grimble's already on track to have more catches than last year with 10 more games left to play, and he's only 2 catches behind what he had last year. Last year was a really bad year for him. He only had 5 catches and 1 touchdown, but he's looking so far to beat that. I guess that really leaves Ben to talk about in this game. I thought he did pretty solid. He completed 32 of his 46 pass attempts for 369 yards and a touchdown, and that's almost a 70% completion percentage. It's like 69.7, and that's really good. That's a really good percentage. You'd like to see that. For all those yards, though, I hope for more touchdowns. Still, though, it's because James Conner was doing so well. But he is improving his touchdown to interception ratio 1 game at a time. There's still a solid game out of him. So what did you think of the offense in this game?
They had a good but not great day is my answer. There was a lot to like about the performance from top to bottom. However, there wasn't a lot of it that came early. The offense sputtered through their first 2 drives. They amassed 33 yards, but 30 of them came from Vance McDonald. So if he wasn't at the top of his game, the offense would have been relatively non-existent. The Bengals clearly wanted to stop the rushing attack early, and they did. But the Steelers' offensive line eventually overpowered them later in the game, and I don't think Ben Roethlisberger was very good early on. He misfired on some throws and was indecisive at times and made some bad choices when throwing with the football. But he finally got going a bit later and had success moving the ball, both on the ground and through the air. And it started with the 3rd drive, which culminated in James Conner's 6th touchdown of the year. The offense capped off the first half with another nice touchdown thanks to a great grab by Juju Smith-Schuster to put the ball at the 1-yard line. The second half, on the other hand, was a little bit different than the first half. They started pretty well, but the difference with the second half as opposed to the first half, at least for the bulk of their drives, they didn't finish. Kind of similar to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' second half, they only had 4 drives, so they didn't have a lot of opportunities to score. The first drive was perfect, a 12-play drive for 85 yards, but then they got to the goal line and they couldn't punch it in. I don't think there's a whole lot to say here. I don't think there were any bad play calls, any bad decisions, really. The Bengals just kind of won the battle, which was kind of surprising given the fact that the Steelers had gotten there on a long drive and the fact that the Steelers have been so good in the red zone this year. But the Bengals won, and the Steelers' inability to finish that drive with a touchdown came back and would haunt them later as they had to settle for another field goal later on. And up until the final drive, it looked like that was going to be a key moment during the game. The fumble by McDonald, as you talked about, would have been a huge play had he not fumbled. Instead of a conversion, which looked likely it could have led to a touchdown, they didn't convert, and it was 20-14 instead of potentially being 24-14. The final drive, at the start of it at least, was kind of ugly at times. A few key plays, a couple nice grabs by Smith-Schuster kept the drive going. And what more can you say about the winning touchdown? I mean, we can talk a little bit about it if you want, Austin. So much has been talked about with the quote-unquote pick play. I guess what were your thoughts on the legality of it and whatnot?
I'll be honest with you. I didn't know that was even controversial until like 3 hours after the game. I was just scrolling Twitter and I saw, oh yeah, the controversial ending to the Steelers versus Bengals. I was like, what do you mean? What was controversial about it? I mean, the Steelers won. Is that like what they're talking about? I had to literally go back, read, and like watch everything. I was just confused because I didn't see the Justin Hunter block at first. I'll be straight up honest with you. Now I've seen it about 100,000 times because you have Bengals fans saying, oh no, that was completely illegal. Then you have like other people saying, oh, it's obviously legal. And you had the NFL officiating back that up after the game, saying that was the right call. And I agree. I think it was the right call. The idea was that the defender initiated contact, and it looked like that's what happened. He ran into Justin Hunter, put out his hands. Justin Hunter reacted by putting his hands out back and pushed him back, and it was just a normal it was just a clean play. I don't know. I didn't understand. I think it was mostly Bengals fans calling for it. I didn't see a lot of people saying, yeah, that's illegal, that weren't Bengals fans, but I thought it was a clean play. What did you think about it?
Yeah, I think that's a clean play. I can understand why people don't like it. We've seen plays like that be run all the time throughout the league, and I can see where it gets to a point where it's like, all right, that's illegal. But I think that I've seen plays like that not get called a lot before, and I think people just want to complain about stuff. I mean, you think about it, he's pretty close to the line of scrimmage, Justin Hunter is. If you're not allowed to block guys within 1 yard of the line of scrimmage, think about this. Wide receiver screens where there's more than one receiver there would be completely illegal. You'd never be able to run wide receiver screens because the guys blocking down the field for the receiver would be called for penalties instantly. So you have to have some leeway there. Am I wrong for thinking that?
No, I think that there should be a leeway, and I believe right now it's at that 1 to 2 yard mark is where you could start to you could block up until for that sort of play. And I agree. Like I think that it would be stupid if they couldn't block for within the 2 yards. Like that, it would make, like you said, the wide receiver screens not possible. Completely illegal play. You could basically make it. What is the call? An illegal formation. You could basically call it an illegal formation if they get into a wide receiver screen formation. I mean, I guess you can't really call that from the beginning of the play. You don't know what it's going to be, but like blow it dead like as soon as they see what's happening. I don't know. You can basically do that. That's really my thought on it.
What you're looking for is illegal man downfield. That's the one you're looking for. But either way.
Yeah, there we go.
Either way, I don't. Maybe the difference is on those receiver screens, it's that the ball's flipped out there too quickly, or that the ball's in the receiver's hands very quickly. I don't know. Either way, I just think it's people just trying to stir the pot, and I just think it was a great play. And you see guys on Sunday Night Football like Tony Dungy and Rodney Harrison, defensive guys, mind you, agree with the no call there. So if those guys are agreeing with the no call, I think it's quite telling that the right decision was made. In any case, let's look back at the rest of the, I guess, offensive positions, at least from what I saw in my trip back through the game. Ben Roethlisberger was, as I said, he was okay. I'd like to see him throw the ball a little bit less than he has lately. This season, he's averaging 43.5 attempts per game, and he threw the ball 46 times this past week. I don't think he needs to be throwing the ball that much. He has been throwing the ball a little bit less the past few weeks, but I think that's a recipe for a problem, especially with his elbow injury the way it is. I want to see the Steelers get to the ground game a little bit more so he doesn't get his arm tired out going into the final stretch of the season. I thought James Conner was fantastic again. After not being a huge factor through weeks 2 through 4, and he wasn't big in the passing game this week, I thought he was very strong. He had some big runs against the Bengals defense, and he ran with a purpose as he always does. As we've known for weeks, Le'Veon Bell is one of the best running backs in the league, but James Conner isn't that bad himself. In fact, the team really isn't noticeably that worse with Conner on the field instead of Bell. You talked about it, Austin. The receiver position offered highs and lows. Only 3 wide receivers caught passes in this game, and 6 were targeted. Only Brown and Smith-Schuster caught more than 1 pass. Considering the tight ends were a big part of the offense, this might not have been necessarily a bad thing, and Smith-Schuster did have a couple drops early, but he did rebound with a few huge catches, including what might have been the catch of the year by mossing Darqueze Dennard. Antonio Brown had a slow start as well, but he had 2 huge catch and runs of 48 and 31 yards, the latter of which went for the win. The tight ends, as I mentioned, were a huge part of the offense. All 3 of them blocked well and played a huge part in the passing game. As a total, Vance McDonald, Jesse James, and Xavier Grimble totaled 14 catches for 129 yards, and the offensive line was fantastic. For the second straight week, they didn't allow a sack and gave up just 1 quarterback hit on 46 dropbacks. This might be one of the best pass-protecting units we've ever seen, at least in Pittsburgh. They were also great as a run-blocking unit for the second straight week. I continue to believe that the success and failure of James Conner on the ground has a lot to do with the offensive line, and they've been much better the last 2 weeks, so I wanted to make sure I recognized that. Any final things I wanted to take a look at? I mean, we broke down the final touchdown there. What do you think about the hold on Dre Kirkpatrick on the final drive?
I thought it was easily a hold. He had his arms wrapped around him, stopping him from going anywhere. Like, his arms are literally draped around him the entire time. I don't know how anyone saw that not being a holding call, to be honest with you.
What about, again, on the final drive, Justin Hunter? Why, was Ryan Switzer hurt? Why was Justin Hunter in the game at this point? And why was Roethlisberger throwing him the ball at that time?
The world may never know. It's a secret, and it is hopefully something that will end when Eli Rogers is finally healthy, because Hunter needs to go.
And then I just wanted to recognize real quick, James Conner had 3 big runs in this game. At least NFL.com made a point of mentioning that the Steelers ran the same running play 3 times in this one, similar to the way the Steelers ran the counter against the Bengals back in 2014, 5 straight times. The first time, it was a run off the right end to Castro and Pouncey. It's a pull off the right side, the pin and pull block, and Nix and Foster block on the backside. This was the first big run of the day for Conner. He hadn't had any running room early on, so it was a big run. The second time, I'll see if I can tag the link in the description when we're done so you can see it. The second play, the Bengals cheated a bit to the strong side, and Conner cut it back inside following Roosevelt Nix's block. And on the third one, this was his longest run of the day, I believe. Conner bounces it outside and gets around the right end for 25 yards to the 1-yard line. I thought he was in, but he was ruled just short, and Tomlin decided not to challenge. What did you think about that, the whole run, and the fact that Tomlin didn't challenge that play, and I guess kind of the way it loomed large after the Bengals eventually took the lead?
I'm one of the few people that agrees with him not challenging that. I felt like the challenge came back inconclusive based on where the ball was. You can't really see, in my opinion. I mean, I think it is a touchdown at the end of the day. If you look at it, yeah. But the way the NFL works, it has to be clear. You need a landmark to be able to tell, and you have to have you need to have every single dot. You need every single I dotted, every T crossed. You need to be precise, and I don't think that was precise enough to say, okay, we have clear and conclusive evidence that this is a touchdown. So I was actually one of the few people that was like, all right, I get not challenging that. That's fine. That's really all I had to say on it.
I'm actually in complete agreement with you. I didn't think, and on top of that, I'd also like to point out the Steelers' offense in the red zone had been fantastic the last few weeks. All season they'd been fantastic in touchdown percentage. Was it really that unreasonable to think they could score a touchdown, from 1 yard out with 3 tries, given the fact that they had already gained, 85 yards on 11 plays, right?
Yeah, I thought it was feasible that it didn't really matter, that they could just punch it in with 3 more attempts to get it. Yeah.
And of course they didn't, and it ended up being quite a big moment, but the Steelers winning negated that. But I still think that was the correct call to not challenge that play. On the other side of the football, let's talk about the defense. an interesting performance because you look at the final stat line and you think, you know what, that was a really good game. But then you look a little bit deeper and you know what, there were some things about the defense that could have been better. I guess, what do you think from top to bottom about their performance?
Well, I'm going to start with the defensive backs. And Joe Hayden had Ike Taylor hands in this one. And, man, it was so depressing. I thought Hayden did solid, but he could have really elevated his game if he just came down with one of the two balls that hit his hands, especially that first one. That first one was gift wrap for him. Andy Dalton gave it to him and said, here, take it and run it back like 20 yards. And it just hurt, especially since that drive led to points after he dropped that pick. Surprisingly, I felt like Hayden didn't do as good against A.J. Green as he did against Julio Jones. Like, not bad, per se, but because I think Julio is better than A.J. Green and because of Hayden's experience with A.J. Green, I was just a bit surprised that I felt like A.J. Green was getting open more. As for the rest of the secondary, I think I was most happy with Mike Hilton. Hilton was tied for the second leading tackler on the team with 5 tackles, 4 of them being solo, and also had 1 big pass defense, which would have been a big gain had he not stopped Boyd from catching it. Sutton actually did surprisingly well as well, at least in the tackling department. He tied Mike Hilton for the second most tackles on the team with 5, but all 5 of his were solo, which should tell you even when he gets beat for a catch, he didn't allow it to turn into points or let it break out and go further. I feel like that's a good step for him, especially with Artie Burns playing the way he has. Every Steelers fan wants to know why Artie Burns played so far back on Tyler Boyd's second touchdown. It made 0 sense. He had to stop Boyd from getting in the end zone. He was basically defending the far back of the end zone by the time he stopped backing up. It was a terrible play from him, and it's reaching the point where he may not even see many snaps every game. The Steelers are losing trust in him, and the proof is in the last play of the game. Just look at it. You know who they trusted to not allow one last deep ball attempt? Cody Sensabaugh. Maybe you call it that the game is unwinnable for the Bengals, but you know they still had Sensabaugh out there instead of Artie just in case. And I don't know if Cody Sensabaugh got credited with that pass breakup, but it fell incomplete. Anyway, as bad as it sounds, Sensabaugh is just a safer pick right now. His play hasn't been bad. It hasn't been detrimental like Artie Burns' play has been. It's just, it's just a safer pick right now. Maybe Sutton can really start challenging both Artie and Sensabaugh for that spot, but we will see. It just doesn't look good for Artie going forward right now. As for the safeties, they had a very quiet day, but I'm not willing to call it a completely bad day, which might surprise some people. From the touchdowns to Tyler Boyd, where they were nowhere to be found, leaving Artie Burns and Chicolo to try their best. May I also say leaving Chicolo out there to dry was terrible on the coaches. I don't know why Chicolo was the only man supposed to be out there to guard Tyler Boyd. I put that on coaching almost 90%. That is such a stupid play call. But, again, that may have just been what the play call was and could have been on coaching for I'm talking about the Artie Burns one now, going back to that. I don't know that for sure, but on both touchdowns, the safeties would have had to been on the far outside. So to me, I don't really blame them because it's not, I don't know, like, it's not a normal position for the safeties to be, like, all the way spread out to the outside. I mean, they probably should have seen it, probably should have moved out that faster, but I'm sure I'd have to go back and watch. I'm sure they both noticed it, but it was just too late. It was very far. It was right at the edge of the field. So, anyway, then as for their low tackling output, Sean Davis only had 1 tackle and Edmonds only had 3, but I really attribute that to the corners being having really sound tackling in this game. Like I said, Hilton and Sutton combined for 10 tackles on their own, and then you add in Hayden's 3 and Artie's 2, and that's 15 tackles from the corners. So I think the low tackling amount speaks more about how the corners were able to stop these guys before the safeties could get there. I thought that the corners all had a good day tackling for the most part, but that's just me. Now let's move on to the front 7. I'm going to start with my favorite performances in this game, and of course, I love to admit when I'm wrong when it comes to the Steelers. I love seeing a guy coming out and proving me wrong because I want to see this team succeed. I want to see these people do good, and I've been harping on Stephon Tuitt. Tuitt came up big in this game, huge actually. He looks like the guy I've wanted him to be, causing all that pressure, and then getting a nice sack on the Andy Dalton that pretty much killed the drive by making it 3rd and 15. He even got 5 tackles too, his most all year. So I was very happy with his play in this one because I felt like the pressure from him was finally there. Next, I was really happy with Vince Williams. After seeing what LJ4 did last week, we're hoping to see more out of Williams since he's the starter, and we saw like a really good performance out of LJ4. Not saying that he was challenging Vince for his spot. Vince is obviously still the better guy, but it was just you wanted to see more disruption out of Williams like we saw last year, and he delivered. He led the team in tackles with 7, 6 of them being solo, and he finally got his first sack of the year, so I was very happy with his play as well. Finally wrapping up, who else I really liked in this game was Siobhan Hargrave. Hargrave had 5 tackles and a sack, just like Tuitt, and he just looked so good out there, causing pressure and being very disruptive. But now let's get to the middle of the pack, guys. Dupree and Bostic didn't have bad games in my mind. Quiet ones, but not bad. I feel like we know what Dupree is, where he gets most of his pressure off stunts. So I don't really expect much as a pass rusher from him unless the stunts are being used. Also, Bostic looked fine out there in coverage. Just the ball carrier kept going Vince's way. That's why he led the team in tackles. So he didn't get a lot of tackles, Bostic, I'm talking about. So I don't really hold that against them. Now let's get to who disappointed me. Man, TJ Watt can't keep doing this, man. He had a nice matchup coming into this one against Bobby Hart, and he only got 2 tackles, 1 being solo, and that 1 solo being for a loss. Just watching him, though, he wasn't even really getting pressure, not the pressure you want, at least. I just don't understand how you put up 3 sacks in 2 separate games and then just not be able to notch 1 or more tackles against another weak offensive line. I'm just not happy with his inconsistency. Then Cameron Hayward has really let me down all year this year, man. I'm a little depressed about this. This was his worst game by far, at least stat-wise. He did get a little pressure. I'll give that to him. But that's not what you want out of the guy that you call elite on your defense. That's not what you want out of your defensive lineman that's supposed to be one of the best defensive players you got. Boswell had more tackles than him. Boswell had more tackles than Cameron Hayward in this game. In fact, you can't even find Hayward on the stat sheet because he didn't record even an assisted tackle. I am very disappointed with how he's played so far this year. What's funny is while I was typing this, literally 2 minutes after I finished writing that sentence, he came out and had an Instagram post where he said, I know I need to play better, which I thought was a weird coincidence, but he knows. He knows he's not performing up to par. He knows that he is supposed to be one of the better guys on the defense, and he's not showing up that way. He's showing up like an average pedestrian guy, and he knows he needs to improve. It's just disappointing because how he's played so far looking at how Watt's played so far this year, what's disappointing about Watt is he can't keep it up, but he's flashed amazing. Thus far for Cameron Hayward, his good games are just like 1-sack performances. He's supposed to be the great one on the defensive line, and I was just like, I don't know, man. Like, TJ Watt doesn't disappoint me as much as Cameron Hayward does, because TJ Watt at least is going to have a crazy game every 3 games, apparently, or 4 games, whatever. And just Cameron Hayward, his good games are 1 sack. Like I said, it's different. It's not what you want. But what did you see out of the defense in this game?
Well, at the end of the day, they did enough to win the game. But they could have been better. They got some lucky breaks. But, it's an acceptable performance. You take that, you move on, you keep trying to improve. First of all, the offense for the Steelers did the defense a solid by keeping them off the field for the majority of the game. The Bengals then played their part as well because they only ran the ball 13 times today. As a matter of fact, they really didn't try running the ball at all. Tell me if you've heard this before. The Bengals were running the ball at a pretty nice clip but didn't commit to it at all. And as a result, they struggled on offense and lost the game.
I've definitely heard that so far. Definitely. Yeah.
Sounds like
I don't have much to say.
Sounds like every game we've ever, remember from recent memory. There was one point when the play breakdown was 26 passes to 7 runs. How does that happen, Austin?
I have no idea. Bad coaching? Just bad decisions?
I mean, I don't know how you want to look at it, but either way, it's not good. That helped the Steelers keeping the defense off the field, not to mention the fact that A.J. Green and Cody Cord dropped multiple passes as well. In the key moments of the game, the defense struggled and folded, giving up long touchdown drives at the end of the first and second half. That was extremely disappointing considering the final numbers they allowed. And starting up front, I guess as far as like the way the whole team played, I don't know. See, like I'm torn because they played horribly in the key moments. My lasting thought was they played terribly, and then you look at the final numbers and they played pretty well. So I guess just at the end of the day, I wanted to see more from them, is I guess kind of what I'm getting at. Starting with the defensive line as far as positional breakdown, look, you already talked about it. Stephon Tuitt and Javon Hargrave both played maybe their best games of the season. Tuitt might have had his best game in almost 2 years, actually, with his performance, including a sack. His was of a high quality, and he pushed the pocket several times in this one. He also had 2 tackles for a loss. Javon Hargrave also had one and a sack as well. He pushed the pocket to a lesser degree, but they were both still pretty good, and they controlled the line of scrimmage in the ground game, even if the numbers weren't that good. You mentioned Hayward. He was just kind of quiet in this game. I didn't think he was bad, but he just didn't really do a lot. Certainly not what we expect from someone like him. You expect something like that more from Javon Hargrave, who's a nose tackle, but Hayward you just want to see more from. And the same can be said for the linebackers outside of Vince Williams. John Bostic had kind of a quiet day considering the way he's played this year. He's usually been the best all-round defender as far as multifaceted players go this year. But he was kind of quiet, and Bud Dupree just didn't do a lot. He wasn't stunting a lot in this game, so he didn't do a whole much. TJ Watt continues his on-again, off-again play. I'm really confused by it, and I don't know why it continues to happen. And then Vince Williams enjoyed a nice bounce-back game returning from injury. He missed a couple tackles, but he was actually pretty good in coverage for most of the game and wasn't all that far off from A.J. Green when he was in coverage on him for some reason. He made several nice plays, including a good sack of Andy Dalton, his first of the season. So a good game from him. The secondary, though, is still a question mark in most spots. The safeties, as you said, had a quiet day for better or worse. Edmonds didn't make much of an impact, and Davis was most notable on a play where he overran Joe Mixon and allowed him to pick up extra yardage. His pursuit angles still leave a lot to be desired. Joe Hayden was solid but didn't have a great day. He dropped 2 interceptions in the day on coverage against A.J. Green. Green helped out with a few drops of his own, but I think we can all agree 7 catches for 85 yards and no touchdowns is a successful day at the office for Hayden. The other side, again, was a mess. Artie Burns is on the struggle bus big time, and I don't have answers at the moment, but the bye week needs to be used to rebuild his confidence because right now he just doesn't have it. And look, I guess just overall, the one thing I will say is that compared to where the defense was at its worst point in week 2 against the Chiefs, they have come a long way. I think you can agree, at the very least, with me on that, right?
Oh yeah, this defense has definitely improved. After that Falcons game, it seemed like so far it seems like a turning point.
Absolutely, and there's still a lot to improve on, but I think it's quite clear that they're playing better than they have at any point, before that for an extended period of time. So I was very happy to see that they've at least done a little bit more. I guess just analyzing some of the sacks, the Vince Williams sack, that was a max protection sack, so I know it wasn't a high-quality sack per se, but there were only, I believe, 2 or 3 guys out on the route, so there were a lot of guys protecting on the play. So Williams did a good job there. What was with the linebackers continuing to be on receivers? I mean, we saw Watt on, I believe Boyd. We saw Chicolo out in the flat on Boyd, which, by the way, whether or not you agree with Chicolo being out there, which I don't think he should have been against him, Chicolo needs to do a better job of pressing him at the line of scrimmage because he was the only guy that wasn't covered on that play. And he could have at least slowed him up a little bit more there. And then Williams on A.J. Green. I'm not sure why they continued to get good matchups there. I think part of it might have to do with the fact that the Bengals know the Steelers' defense well, but I think it could also just have to do with poor personnel decisions by Keith Butler.
I really don't know what to attribute it to. I think it's the latter of the two. I think it's Keith Butler making poor decisions on who should be out there, and I really don't. I don't like the Bengals as a team. I think we could both agree to that. I think that until they fire Marvin Lewis, they're always going to be a locale, so to speak. And I think that they aren't. I know that they're professionals, but I feel like they don't know the Steelers' defense well enough. I really just think it's Keith Butler shooting himself.
Also, I think I was looking back at a couple of the long runs before. Just a couple of them where Vince Williams and T.J. Watt were not involved in the play where you maybe wanted them to. Not a whole lot that was bad. A couple of the long runs for Mixon, there were missed tackles. Artie Burns had a bad unforced holding error. I felt like the nickel blitzes with Mike Hilton. I thought Mike Hilton played well, but the blitzes, which we typically see from him working out well, were not very good in this one. I actually think this had more to do with the Bengals expecting it because they see it so much than it did the Steelers just not executing it well. I think the Steelers tried it a few times and it just didn't work. The Bengals were ready for it. That's just kind of how I saw it.
Yeah, I see that. I actually didn't really even see Mike Hilton blitzing in this one. I don't even remember it. That must have been how poorly it worked out for him, like you said. I guess that is because the Bengals knew the Bengals had versed them so much that they knew to expect it. I literally can't even remember seeing it.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe it actually happens on not the go-ahead. I believe it happens on Tyler Boyd's second touchdown. I'm going to have to check this out for you. But I guess at the end of the day, that's really all I have to say as far as the defense goes. Good but not great day. Some encouraging things, but they were also helped out. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's certainly not the worst thing in the world. So I'm going to check back and look for that play.
All right, sounds good to me. Let's move on to special teams, though, while you look at that. I said already, but this was the worst unit by far. The fact that I even have to talk about the long snapper is a bad sign. But how does a long snapper get 2 holding calls? How? 2? I genuinely want to know. But moving on from him, Switzer easily had his worst game of the year. Apparently, my feeling of him having a good day, the feeling I was getting was really trying to tell me he was going to have a bad one. Because firstly, both of his kick returns didn't make it back to the 25. Then on 2 punts, he did absolutely terrible. He decided to let one bounce instead of fielding and calling for a fair catch, and it gave the Bengals a 62-yard punt because of it. And then on another punt, he had so much room, like 5 yards between him and the nearest player when he caught it, but fair caught it anyway. He just made the wrong decisions. Moving on to Barry, he's just so inconsistent. He started with a short but okay punt based on field position. Then he had a short, terrible punt based on field position, and then boomed one for 69 yards. I just don't like it. I want consistency out of these guys. As for the other kicker, he hit both his field goals and both his PATs, further extending his perfect streak against the Bengals. However, he didn't have a good day on kickoffs, in my opinion. He's at least partially responsible for one. I would say 2, though, of Erickson's long returns. But that leads me to the coverage team. What happened? We haven't seen bad things from them really since the Chiefs game. And they allowed Erickson 2 huge runs. He averaged 40.7 yards on kickoff returns. What did you do in coverage team? That's really all I got to say. Did you find the play? Did Mike Hilton blitz on that touchdown?
He actually did. It was the second passing touchdown from Dalton to Boyd at the end of the half. You can see Hilton kind of gets slowed up. He gets in. He runs into somebody. I forget. It might be Chicolo. It might be Edmonds. I forget who it is. But he gets slowed up on the way there. And it wouldn't have mattered because Boyd was wide open because of how Artie Burns played it. So I'm not going to attribute that just to the blitz. Although it might have made the throw a little off target. But at the end of the day, Burns is the guy that has to make at least a little more of a contested play there.
Okay. But moving along, what did you think of the special teams going into this game?
Oh, well, you pretty much covered it top to bottom. Danny Smith and the special teams unit, not a great day. Chris Boswell is still perfect against the Bengals. He hit all 4 of his kicks on the day, but he had a couple of short kickoffs that helped to spring Erickson of the Bengals on a couple big returns. Barry was inconsistent again, but I will say outside of the one short punt in Steelers territory that set up the Bengals for their first touchdown of the game, I thought he was pretty solid. The couple of the other short punts that he had were pretty solid. He had 3 of his 4 punts down inside the 20. Ryan Switzer was relatively pedestrian on the day as a returner. He had one nice punt return of 15 yards, but he didn't return or catch a punt that he should have fielded like you talked about. That turned into a 63-yard punt for Kevin Huber of the Bengals, and he made an inexplicable decision to return the final kickoff with 1:18 remaining instead of taking the touchback. First of all, he only got it back to the 23, so the touchback instead would have gotten him 2 more yards, and then he also lost 6 seconds running it back. I know the Steelers ended up scoring with only 10 seconds left, but that could have been a brutally terrible mistake. You need every second you can get in the 2-minute drill. And then obviously the kickoff coverage was terrible. I talked about it before the game, saying that I was worried about Erickson because he was averaging over 30 yards per kick return this season. And, well, he averaged 40 in this game. You shouldn't have been allowing him to return kicks in the first place. Boswell's got to boot it out of the end zone. And just not a good day. A couple of the times the guys were just not in their lane, so just at the end of the day, not very good. Into our awards section of the week, Austin, start with the player of the week for me. Who stood out in your mind?
Sure. It's been getting real hard to pick one guy here. I was really stuck between James Conner and Juju Smith-Schuster, and I know what most of you are thinking. James Conner had 2 touchdowns and more yards than Juju, so it should be an easy decision, but that fumble recovery by Juju, like, it's not being talked about a lot, but it was a big deal, at least to me. It's just, that saved 3 points. That saved the Steelers from, it turned 0 into 3 right there. I basically attribute that to Juju. Then he also had the 2-point conversion, so it was really hard for me to choose, but ultimately I did have to give it to James Conner, though. He averaged 5.8 yards per carry on the ground and had 111 yards on the day. So congratulations to James Conner for being the Stronger Than Steel Player of the Week. What was the Stronger Than Steel big stop of the week?
The big stop of the week this week goes to Stephon Tuitt for his first sack of the season, with the Steelers up 17-14, a slim 3-point lead in the third quarter. With 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. The Bengals were set up with the 2nd and 8 at the Steelers' 38-yard line, just at the outside of field goal range. Stephon Tuitt, maybe with his most impressive sack of his entire career, blows by, I forget his name, Redmond of the Bengals, the offensive guard, just swipes him aside, and he just runs right at Dalton and brings him down. A huge 7-yard sack. And it wasn't a third down sack, but for a guy that we've, as you said, you've harped on him a lot this year, and I've been critical of his play as well. He was fantastic in this game, and that one play was a very dominant bull rush type of play, a high quality sack for sure, and one that you want to see more of going forward. If we see more plays like that from Stephon Tuitt, I think it's going to go a long way for making this defense what we think it could be. And, for years I've been saying I always thought Tuitt had a higher upside than Hayward, and we know he can do it. And this play is a perfect example of showing that we know that he can be great. So more of this going forward is fantastic, and obviously it was a huge play, and in my mind, the biggest defensive play of the week. So in my mind, it's certainly deserving of earning this week's Stronger Than Steel Big Stop of the week. And as far as the play of the game goes, there were some very good, deserving candidates, Austin, but I think it was quite obvious we had to go with the walk-off touchdown for Antonio Brown, 31 yards to the house. Let's talk a little bit about that play. I know we covered it a bit before, but I guess just at the end of the day, what a great play by Ben Roethlisberger in the pre-snap adjustment, and just they were tracking the next-gen stats, the speed of a player with the football in his hands. It's the fastest Antonio Brown has run in a single play since they started recording the stat. And, boy, he was moving, I guess. Is there anything else you wanted to add on the play?
No, I was going to say that, though. He looked really fast, like the fastest I've ever seen Antonio Brown. That's funny. I didn't actually see that stat. But, yeah, again, great adjustments by Ben, seeing that the Bengal was going to leave Antonio Brown in single coverage. Just great play. Definitely deserving of a Stronger Than Steel play of the game.
And there was certainly several other deserving plays in this game. Vance McDonald had a huge catch and run of 26 yards where he broke the tackle of Vontez Burfict and I believe several other players, including Williams. Juju Smith-Schuster mossed Darquez Denard for a 29-yard gain. James Conner had a 25-yard run, a 17-yard run where he broke the tackle of Williams and Burfict as well. Just a lot of good plays in this one. So let's go through our positional grades for this game. Starting with the quarterback, I'll go first. Ben Roethlisberger got a B plus in my opinion. I thought he was good, not great. He made some bad choices early on and missed on a few passes, including one to Jesse James in the end zone on the goal line that he probably should have made. But at the end of the day, he did enough to win. 369 yards in this one. I thought it was a good day for him.
For me, I'm going to give them a B plus. An A minus. I had a B plus originally, but I felt like Ben had a decent day, but nothing to write home about, in my opinion. Didn't make many mistakes towards the end, but only got one touchdown, so I'm going to keep it an A minus. Moving on to running backs, what did you give them?
I gave running backs an A. Look, Connor wasn't as dynamic as we've come to expect in the passing game lately, but that's okay. Connor was pretty much great everywhere else, though. He ran hard and effectively and held up well in pass protection again, so I gave him an A.
I'm actually going to go with an A plus. I feel like I could say confidently, as I don't think I could think of a mistake James Conner really made in this game. Maybe he didn't put up big numbers in the air, but the 2 touchdowns and great rushing average was enough for me to give him an A plus. But going to wide receivers, what did you give them?
I went with the B plus. It was a top-heavy performance. The 3 guys, and Ryan Switzer, James Washington, and Justin Hunter combined for just 3 targets and 1 catch for 7 yards. So not a great day for anyone outside of Smith-Schuster and Brown. So I went with the B plus. What about you?
I agree completely. The top was heavy. That's it. That's really it. The 2 guys, Juju and Brown, were it for the wide receivers, and there wasn't really anything else. So B plus. For tight ends, what did you give them?
I gave them an A. It's they've been the best unit all year long on offense, and it's going to continue in this one.
Oh yeah, I gave them an A as well. The fumbling problem Vance has keeps them from an A plus for me, but it was close. I mean, they almost got an A plus. Next up is offensive line. What did you give them?
I gave the offensive line an A plus. They opened up a ton of holes for James Conner in this one, and you know what? Another week, another no-sack game for the offensive line against Roethlisberger with 1 quarterback hit. They've played their best football of the season after I harped on them a lot the last few weeks, including the Ravens loss. So very happy to see this performance, so I gave them an A+.
Agree again. No sacks, only 1 quarterback hit, and solid running lanes for Connor and an A+ from me. Moving on to the defensive side of things, the defensive line, what did you give them?
I gave the defensive line an A-. Look, I don't know what's going on with Cameron Hayward right now, and I'm a little disappointed, like as you mentioned, but I've seen a lot of good things from Stephon Tuitt and Javon Hargrave the last couple weeks. They've played well, and I wanted to make sure I recognize that.
I'm going to actually agree with you. Again, A-. Javon Hargrave and Stephon Tuitt were great in this one. Hayward holds them down, but just Tuitt and Hargrave's play was just too good to do that. Going into linebackers, I'm going to give mine first. I gave him a B-. I felt like the overall play could have been better from this unit. Vince Williams did great, but no one else really stood out to me, so I'm going to give them a B-. What did you give the linebackers?
I'm going with the B, and the good comes mostly from Vince Williams. He was good in coverage. He had the sack. He did have a couple missed tackles, but John Bostic was okay too. He just wasn't involved on a lot of plays. I wasn't very pleased with the outside linebackers. We talked about them before. They didn't impact the game a whole lot, so they're going to bring it down to a B for me. On to defensive backs. I am going to give the defensive backs a B-. And look, I know the final numbers are pretty good, but at the end of the day, the Bengals dropped, I think, like 4 or 5 passes that really could have hurt them. Cody Core in particular dropped like a 16-yard pass. It was dropped right in the bucket, and they gave up long touchdown drives on the final drives of the halves in both the first and second half. So I wasn't overly impressed, but they did do some nice things. The safeties were quiet as well, so I went with the B-.
I'm going to give them a B. I liked Hilton's and Sutton's tackle in this one, but Artie continues to be a problem when he's out on the field. Moving on to specialists, what did you give them?
I gave them a C minus. Ryan Switzer's idiotic decision to return the final kickoff and the struggles of the kick coverage team brought this grade down a lot. Barry was inconsistent but solid, but I was really magnified on the kick coverage team. I was not impressed with them at all, so I gave him a C minus.
I'm going to give them a D plus here. I was not willing to say they failed completely with Boswell having a solid outing, but Kennedy's penalties, Switzer's bad returns and decisions, and Barry's inconsistencies held them down really heavily. And that just leaves coaching. What do you give coaching in this one?
B plus. And look, I know that there were 9 penalties in this game, and there were some question marks with the defense, but I would like to point out that at least defensively, the Steelers have had far fewer defensive communication breakdowns lately. It's been less often we've been seeing guys running wide open down the field with no one on them. Steelers guys pointing at each other like, you cover him, whatnot. So I was quite happy to see that that's been an improvement the last couple weeks. And on offense, we've seen a balanced attack with involvement from the tight ends a lot, and I like that. I want to see more of that, and I think I'd like to see them run the ball a little bit more, but considering where this team was a few weeks ago, I think the coaches have finally made the correct adjustments to help this team play better as a whole. So I'll give them a B+, but they still have room to improve, of course.
I'm going to give them a B. Defensively, I have no idea why Chickalo is being thrown out there to try and have to cover Tyler Boyd in the red zone. Stupid decision that I put on the coaches. And also the 9 penalties in this one is pretty high still, but not much else to complain about that after that. So I give them a B.
Let's start with the winners and losers now. Austin, give me your winners for the Steelers today on offense and defense.
For offense, it's Marquise Pouncey. I picked Pouncey because I feel like he did the best on the offensive line, but really the offensive line as a whole won in this game. Then my other winner on defense, I already mentioned him. But after giving him an earfill, the past few weeks, Tuitt really stepped up and impressed me in this game with the pressure he caused and actually got a sack in this one. So I was happy with Stephon Tuitt and Marquise Pouncey in this game. Who were your winners?
Mine were David DeCastro on offense. And look, I don't think I saw any bad plays that stood out all game long from the line for the most part. DeCastro has long been one of the best offensive guards in football, and I think his play the last couple of years have been off the charts. And yet this might have been one of his best games in recent memory. He was a great lead blocker for Connor and played a big part in stopping Geno Atkins all day long. Atkins had just 1 tackle. Vince Williams was my winner on defense. He's had better days, but Williams had a sack and was surprisingly good in coverage on the day. All this coming back at a time where he rarely had missed a game due to injury. On the broadcast, they said he had missed his first game in 83 straight games dating back to his rookie season, so I was impressed with his play. On the other hand, who disappointed you, Austin?
For offense, it's Justin Hunter. I don't know why the Steelers continue to hold on to him. He's not the guy I want to have out on the field when the Steelers are trying to win the game. Just cut him and let Rodgers come back, please. That's all I want. I know the Steelers are in no rush to bring Rodgers back right now, but, I mean, it just seems like it's an immediate improvement. Then on defense, it's Cameron Hayward. No stats from him, continuing to add on to his lackluster season thus far, so I don't really have much else to say about that. Who are your losers on offense and defense?
My losers on offense is really just the red zone offense. After coming into the game as the second best offense in red zone TD percentage, the offense was 2 for 4 on TDs this time. They were likely to come back to earth anyways at some point, but scoring a touchdown on either one of those drives, those final 2 where they didn't score touchdowns, would have been huge, and they wouldn't have caused, that would have been a question mark if they had lost this game. It would have been, well, what if they had scored a touchdown there? So the red zone offense needs to improve. And then the obvious big loser here is Artie Burns on defense, and I guess let's talk a little bit about him here. Burns has been a guy that in his previous 2 seasons has not had the best starts to the season, but had kind of turned it around at midseason last year and 2 years ago. I guess, what is it about Artie Burns? We know he's talented, but it's just bad decision-making, it's poor technique, and sometimes we see good things from him. I guess what is going on with him, and I guess what do the Steelers need to do, and how important is he to this team?
My idea is that he panics. Because obviously he flashes good, and that's really weird. Like, you could see that he's actually shown some good potential, but other times he just looks lost out there. And I attribute that to him panicking. I feel like he breaks down on the play. He's like, oh no, I don't know what to do completely. I'm a little confused, or like, I feel like that's what it comes down to, because he's shown like really good talent at some points. And then we've seen some like, why are you in the NFL talent? Like, we've gotten both sides of the spectrum, and there's no solid evidence to believe anything on we don't know why he actually performs this way. But I'm going to go with the panic thing. I think that he just struggles out there once he gets in the game, panics a little bit when the play starts. That's my guess. What do you think? Why do you think Artie Burns performs the way he does?
Oh, I can't even begin to let you know. I mean, there's so many different factors, and I wouldn't even know where to start. But, I mean, I will say this. I don't think the Steelers can – I'll say this right now. I don't think the Steelers can win a Super Bowl if Artie Burns is not starting at cornerback. And let me explain myself. Artie Burns playing at the level which we saw at the end of last season and the end 2 years ago when he was playing some of the best football we've seen from him. We know that there's more to Artie Burns than that. It's a question of can he do it? And it's just a matter of building up his confidence again. So I don't know how the Steelers are going to do it. I'm really hoping this bye week was huge for Tom. If I'm Tom Bradley, the defensive backs coach, I would have spent all this past week just looking at Artie Burns and focusing with him just one-on-one time. We're going to do some small things to sort of improve your confidence. And as far as Burns goes in playing time, don't throw him right back out there because he's going to keep making mistakes. But this is my idea. I want to hear what you think about it. Play him situationally. Help him play on, first do like an easy play where he's not likely to get burned or something. Something like a 3rd and 18 or something like that where they're not going to go deep most likely. They're probably just going to punt on the drive. Just have him play in situations where he can build up his confidence and just work on his technique this week and just slowly kind of recreate his game and let him get back to where he needs to be. And I think that can go a long way, at least to helping Artie Burns get to where he needs to be, because I don't see the Steelers winning a Super Bowl with Cody Sensabaugh starting at cornerback. I think the only way they can do it is with Artie Burns playing the best football that he can play consistently. And I wanted to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think that when you said that, I thought you misspoke at first. I was very confused. I was like, wait, what? But now after you explained it, it makes more sense. I feel like that would be good for him to let him work on his technique, because right now Cody Sensabaugh is the technically better cornerback in his technique. You know that he's not going to make a mistake. He's just not as good athletically. And he's got stone hands, we also seen for the most part too. I mean, it's okay, but regardless, so maybe letting Artie Burns out there in those 3rd and 18 situations or something like that will build up his confidence, because maybe that is the problem. Maybe confidence is the problem. It's either that or you have to trade for another cornerback. Like Artie Burns has to improve, or because to win the Super Bowl, I mean, it's either trading for another cornerback, Artie Burns has to improve, or Cameron Sutton or Brian Allen has to step up and surprise us. There's really, with Artie Burns the way he is right now, there's no winning a Super Bowl. If Cody Sensabaugh has to start, there's no winning a Super Bowl. Something has to happen. There's definitely a change needs to happen, as stupid as that sounds, for this team to be able to be a Super Bowl contender this year. It's just, I don't really know what that is. I don't know if Artie Burns is going to be the answer. I don't know if the quarterback is on the roster. It's a lot of questions.
Absolutely, and this might not be something we can necessarily answer at all today, but it's a dialogue I wanted to get started, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about it later. But in any case, he is the big loser from this game. Steelers pick up a win within the division. They were the last AFC North team to do so with this win. This past one makes 7 straight against the Bengals. And the big news coming out of this game, Vontaze Burfict has been fined $112,000 for his conduct against the Steelers. There's a laundry list of things, basically, but to sum it up, Vontaze Burfict had a controversial hit on Antonio Brown / Jesse Bates when he hit helmet to helmet on Bates, where he looked like he was trying to take out Brown like he did in the playoff game and then hit him with his elbow against the head. He nearly hit Ben Roethlisberger pretty hard on the quarterback sneak, and then he reportedly pointed at Juju Smith-Schuster after the play in which he hit Brown and said, "You're next." So I guess, I don't really know. I guess, what are your thoughts on the fine, and what are your thoughts on the no suspension and just what happened in this game?
I just don't understand why he doesn't get suspended. Like, this is the first time that I was almost surprised by the amount of feedback from everyone. Like, most of the time it's usually just Steelers fans, and people are just like, okay, you're just wearing your Steelers blinders. Like, just shut up. This is how the game plays. This is the first time where I felt like a lot of people was, like, looking at this, because a lot of people made videos, and they're like, why is this guy filming me? You have Chiefs fans who remember what happened to Anthony Sherman coming together. You have Panthers fans coming back and remember what happened to them was Vontaze Burfict. And you have all these people. And right now, I actually saw a comment. It was like, I'm worried about Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes going into this next game. They play Sunday Night Football, I guess later tonight if you guys are listening on Sunday. But it's just, people are worried that he's going to end up injuring other players, and he's out there trying to do that. It's even one of his teammates. I saw an interesting quote today. Cameron Hayward and Geno Atkins at the Pro Bowl last year were talking about it, and Cameron Hayward said, like, Geno Atkins doesn't even know why he acts that way. He's a nice guy off the field, apparently, and he just, when the game starts, he just turns into something else. His own teammate came out and wasn't sticking up for his actions. He should be suspended. I mean, will it do anything? Probably not. He's been suspended 2 times now. But to save other players from getting hurt, maybe give him a warning, because he would have lost more money if he got suspended. It's just $112,000 seems like a lot because it's one of the highest fines, but he should have been suspended instead, at least 1 game. I was a little upset about that, especially with how many different things he did in this game that were questionable, because actually one of the biggest things was also him leading with the helmet against James Conner. He didn't end up connecting, but he led with his helmet. He just missed because James Conner shrugged him off. He's a dirty player. He should be suspended for his actions. Maybe later in the year he will be suspended or something. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think the only way to get to this guy is to suspend him for like 8+ games. He hasn't changed before, and I don't think it's going to take anything less than that for him to change the way he plays. I mean, I'm going to draw quite a parallel here, and I want you to tell me what you think of it. And it's Tom Wilson in the NHL with the Washington Capitals, and the NHL just sent a message by suspending him 20 games, which I want to see how that goes. But I guess, what do you think about that? I think it's only going to take a suspension that's really long like that for anything to happen.
Well, isn't 20 games like only the equivalent of like 4 in the NFL? How many hockey games are there again?
There's 82, so that's about a quarter of the season, so that's like 4 games. That would be essentially like, I guess, 4 games. But the difference is that in hockey you're paid less, and it's different because typically suspensions are like 4 games. A 20-game suspension is a long time in hockey.
Yeah, I guess that's fair, but I feel like if we're going to move it to the equivalent, like you said originally, I think it'd have to be 8 games for Burfict to finally wake up, because he's already gotten a 3-game suspension. Started this season with a 3-game suspension, so, like, I don't know. I think he needs longer than 3 or 4, because it obviously didn't work. He came off that suspension, and immediately we were questioning him.
All right. Let's move on. You want to cover the NFL news?
Sure. One of the first firings, actually the first firing of this year, Bucs defensive coordinator Mike Smith has been fired. It makes sense. The Buccaneers have been really struggling against their opponents. Also, the Cardinals offensive coordinator Mike McCoy has been fired, and former Steelers quarterback Byron Leftwich has taken over as offensive coordinator. Do you have anything to add about either of those 2 firings?
No, it's just if the Cardinals defensive coordinator gets fired, it means Larry Foote, the former Steelers inside linebacker, could be promoted as well. So Pittsburgh West lives on.
Yes, the Pittsburgh West in Arizona. Moving on to other news, Browns' Carlos Hyde has been traded to the Jaguars for a fifth-round pick. I didn't like that trade. I thought that the Browns could have gotten a fourth-round pick instead. They are really betting a lot on Nick Chubb, which, I mean, he has done really well in limited snaps, but it's been very limited snaps. I was looking at the numbers, and he just hasn't really gotten that much. I wouldn't have parted with Carlos Hyde, arguably their best offensive player, for less than a fourth-round pick. I think that was a questionable call. Do you have anything to say?
I think Nick Chubb is a good player, and I think he's going to show everyone that he is a good player. I could be wrong, but I really like Nick Chubb coming out of the draft, and I think he's going to be a good player for the Browns, and he was just kind of wasting away out there. Nothing against Carlos Hyde. I like him too. The Jaguars desperately needed a running back. Really what they need is Leonard Fournette back and a different quarterback, but the Jaguars decided that TJ Yeldon wasn't doing it for him, and I thought he was doing a decent job, but I mean, I guess the offense hasn't produced either, so, what do you say, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can't really do much about it. But anyhow, the last bit of news we have to talk about is the Raiders are taking L's even on their bye week. They've been fined $20,000 for not downgrading Kalichi Asmeli to out versus Seahawks when he didn't take the trip to London. And also, they've gotten news that Marshawn Lynch will be out at least a month. Is there anything you have to say about the Raiders being trash?
No, it's really frustrating that I keep getting injuries in my fantasy league where it costs money to do ad drops. And this might be the one that makes me add a player because I don't know if I can set a lineup at this point without him. I'm bare bones right now, and this was not something I could have afforded. And the Raiders really couldn't afford anything else, but they're just awful, and it's kind of hilarious watching what's happening because I think everyone saw this coming too.
Yep, we're going to keep rooting for them to be doing bad since the Steelers have their sixth-round pick. We want as high as we could get in the sixth round. But anyway, before we move on to the league pick'em, I want to let you all know about TSEShop.com. They're the number one place for all Pittsburgh Steelers, Penguins, and Pirates memorabilia. So do yourselves a favor and check them out. But now, let's go to the pick'em section. We have Bucks at Falcons first, and it's a pretty boring game. I mean, it's one of those games that everyone enjoys besides, like, people that are fans of defense. It was a high-scoring affair. Do you have anything to really say about it? I didn't really watch, if I'm being honest with you. It wasn't a game that really interests me going into the week.
I was working late on Sunday morning. I actually didn't get back until pretty much the second quarter of the Steelers game, so I didn't see a lot of what was going on. A necessary win for the Falcons. The Buccaneers in free fall mode. Fitzmagic seems like it was such a long time ago. Chargers hand the Browns a crushing defeat in Cleveland. This might have been the most surprising result, or really the kind of result that we expected from the Browns all year, and it took 6 weeks to happen. Melvin Gordon went off with 3 touchdowns. The Browns looking very pedestrian in this one. What were your thoughts?
I just thought the Browns were going to keep it closer, but the Chargers, Melvin Gordon looks amazing. I love Melvin Gordon, and after his first year, everyone thought he was going to be a dead rock, and now he's here. He's doing amazing this year, and he carried this team to this game. Philip Rivers didn't even complete that many balls. He didn't throw for that many yards. This is mostly Melvin Gordon, and then the Browns just look stagnant on offense, like they can't do anything. But yeah, I was wrong to pick the Browns to cover, so there's that.
The Chargers are 4-2. Their 2 losses have come against the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Rams. The Chiefs having just lost their first game, and the Rams the only NFL unbeaten team remaining. So just keep that in mind going forward. No offense, Austin, I'm going to rub this one in your face a little bit. I know you don't like the Seahawks at all, but I picked them to win over the Raiders, and the Raiders have staked quite a claim as being the worst team in football. This game played out in London. The Raiders never had a chance. Let's just tell it how it was.
The Raiders are garbage. That's just that. The Raiders are a very unfortunate team. They're going to be a very sad team when they move to Las Vegas. and they still have a 10-year deal with John Gruden that has 9 years left on it until they cut him, which he's not making it. He's not making it to the end of this deal. I can tell you that right now. It is looking really bad. They're trying to trade every single player that has value besides Derek Carr. They're like, oh, you want Amari Cooper? Take Amari Cooper. Oh, you want Jared Cook? Take Jared Cook. I don't want any of these guys. Like, they don't help me win games. They're something. That's the best I could describe it.
And you know what's the worst thing about it for the John Gruden deal? The Raiders are 32nd in the NFL in revenue that they accrue, which means that they probably make close to the least amount of money in the NFL, which means they'd have a tougher time cutting ties with John Gruden sooner than later. So they might have to wait even longer to get John Gruden out of the office. And boy, that just sucks. I'm glad I'm not a fan of that team right now.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be rough moving forward. It's going to be rough being a Raiders fan.
Dolphins and Bears. The Dolphins, surprisingly, the Brock Lobster pulls out the victory. Brock Osweiler with the surprising start. 380 yards and 3 touchdowns. Here's a bizarre stat. Brock Osweiler's first start as a member of a team with the Broncos, the Texans, and now the Dolphins have all come in wins against the Bears. Very strange considering all 3 teams he has played for have been AFC teams, which that means that they play the Bears once every 4 years. Quite a bizarre stat. Kenyon Drake nearly lost them the game by fumbling at the half-yard line, but they came back and won the game in the final seconds, preventing yet another tie for my sadistic wants. But at the end of the day, the Brocktober, it's Brocktober right now, and the Dolphins come away with the win.
It's Brocktober, baby. You said it the best way you could. This out of every game this week, this was the one that hit me out of left field. This one I never saw coming. I was like, Brock Osweiler is about to throw more picks than Nathan Peterman in a half. And I was not ready for them to be able to keep up with the Bears. After the Bears' defense has been so solid coming in. I mean, they lost Khalil Mack in the game, but like, I didn't see this coming. I was shocked, to say the least.
Jets and Colts. Andrew Luck throws 4 touchdowns in a losing effort. What else is new for the Colts, right?
Yep. The Colts are something. They're just like the Raiders. They're just something. Their team is pretty trashy after like Andrew Luck, and that's really it. That's all they got. Andrew Luck and Darius Leonard. There you go.
The Panthers and Redskins, a pretty big NFC battle. The Panthers fall to 0-2 on the road. The Redskins pulling out a surprising win at home, 23-17. Adrian Peterson returns after an injury last week. 17 carries for 97 yards in the winning effort. I didn't see this one coming. I don't know if I think higher of the Redskins now or worse of the Panthers after this one. I think I'm a little higher on the Redskins.
I don't know what to think of that one, honestly. After seeing it, I was like, wow, the Panthers just blew a game. I don't think I'm willing to really move either of them. I just think that the Panthers had a bad game and the Redskins had a good game. Maybe the Redskins were more prepared. It just shocked me when the Redskins were without Chris Thompson, who was their second leading receiver on the team as a running back, and then Jamison Crowder. Like, I thought they were screwed, especially after how bad they've been playing. But good for them for pulling out a win against Carolina. I mean, maybe being home helped, but I didn't think that anything was going to help them. I thought the Panthers were going to cover easily. But I'm not sold on them being better. I'm not sold on the Panthers being worse, though. Sort of like when the Steelers tied the Browns. I mean, it's a little different because it's a division game, but like I still feel like the Steelers are way better.
All right, the Bills lose in Houston to the Texans. The Peter meme is alive and well. A pick 6 with the Bills in position to win the game, and then another interception to seal it. I'm sorry, but as much as I love Nathan Peterman, I think he doesn't deserve to play in the NFL anymore. I think it's over for him.
Oh, yeah, and it's proven. They're starting Derek Anderson. That's how you know. They picked up Derek Anderson off the street last week. They're like, we can't start this man. he literally is going to throw 5 picks in their hands. But I got that pick right, though. I got the Bills game right. I got the Bills plus 10. I was so happy about that.
In such bizarre fashion, too. But nobody, as we know, circles the wagon like the Buffalo Bills. The Rams stay undefeated, beating the Broncos in Denver. Todd Gurley rushes for 208 yards. The Jaguars get slaughtered in Dallas 40-7. This might have been the most surprising result of the season, maybe. I really didn't see this one coming.
I didn't see that one coming either. I was shocked. I mean, you picked the Cowboys to win, so like maybe it came at least a little close. Yeah, at least you expected the Cowboys to win. I thought the Jaguars were going to have their way with that team. Whew.
I didn't think they'd win by 33. Let me put it that way. Baltimore racks up 11 sacks of Marcus Mariota and the Titans, who punted on every drive against the Ravens. Look, the Ravens, they have a very good defense, and they're better than what I thought they were. I still think Marcus Mariota and the offensive line did a terrible job in this game. Mariota has to throw the football in this one. He just held onto the ball for so damn long, and it was definitely bigger than the 21-0 score suggests, but I don't think much of the Titans whatsoever. I think their hot start has evaporated, and they're really just not a good football team.
Titans are, how you say, trash. They need better running backs to help them to establish a run game. But, I mean, their offensive line played bad. Their quarterback played bad. Their defense actually did all right. They only allowed 17 points. But, like, when your offense literally does nothing, there's something you can do. So, yeah, Titans are trash.
And maybe his worst half of the season and his worst game of the season, Patrick Mahomes still manages to help the Chiefs put up 40 points, but the Patriots come away with the win. Just in the final moments, Rob Gronkowski comes up with a big catch. The Patriots, as they so often do, win a big game at home, 43-40. What did you think of this game?
Scoregami. It was a never-before-seen score in the NFL, but it was a good game if you don't like defense. Again, 43-40, thrilling, exactly what the general audience likes. But I thought that the Chiefs played better than the Patriots overall. I mean, the score doesn't say that. I think that this might be the matchup in the AFC championship game. We'll see. But I think that this isn't the last we've seen this matchup.
You already know, I'm not a huge fan of all offense, which means I was kind of bored by this game. I was more interested in what happened with the Patriots fan throwing the beer on Tyreek Hill than I was this actual game. I was not impressed at all. I left this game feeling more tired than I was excited. And maybe that makes me a bad person, but it's one thing to see this kind of a game every now and then, but to see like 5 games like this a week, I was not impressed. And finishing up with the Monday Night Football game, the Packers doing everything they can to have a very unimpressive look at home despite the finishing with the win. Aaron Rodgers, playing God mode as he so often does, wills the Packers to a victory despite the fact that the team did everything in its power to lose.
I think my favorite storyline from that game was Mason Crosby's redemption. Like, I really wanted to see Mason Crosby bounce back after he missed 5 kicks against the Lions, and he did. And him and Devontae Adams nearly mounted the biggest comeback in fantasy for me. I was so close. I was so mad. I only lost by 15 points, but I was down by 80 points going in, and he had a player playing in that game. I believe it was DeForest Buckner. So I was really watching this game intently, and I thought I was going to win, but it's a shame it didn't go to overtime. I was so hyped.
I am very salty that George Kittle didn't have a couple more catches because I lost by 2 points because of it. So I'm very unhappy. I'm very unhappy it didn't go to overtime. In any case, let's talk about last Thursday's game. The Cardinals, who we both picked to win, went and hosted the Denver Broncos, who were in a free fall and got absolutely pounded. And that offensive line, I know we've talked about worst offensive lines in the league. That might actually be the worst offensive line in the league. Now, granted, Von Miller and Bradley Chubb are good pass rushers, but Josh Rosen had no chance.
Oh, yeah, that was a rough game. That was just a rough game to watch, to be honest with you, unless you're a Broncos fan. It was just really nasty to have Josh Rosen and David Johnson out there just kind of left out there to dry. Patrick Peterson's out there on the sideline just being upset. This is definitely not what Larry Fitzgerald deserved. This is not. I wish Larry Fitzgerald retired after last season, because I don't want to see Larry Fitzgerald go out this way. This is terrible.
All right, let's go through Week 7 really quickly, since we're kind of getting up against it here. Week 7, the Steelers on a bye, so we won't talk about any Steelers game to preview right now. We'll kind of go over, I guess, kind of our mid-season kind of thoughts on the team, and we'll get into the Steelers-Browns Volume 2 next week as well. But for now, starting at 9:30, the Titans playing the LA Chargers in London, one of those 9:30 games again. So I don't know if you'll get a chance to see it. I definitely will not be able to catch this one tomorrow because I'll be at work. But I think it's going to be quite an easy game for the Chargers. I think they're a good team, and I don't think the Titans are. So I think the Chargers, give me the 6.5-point spread. Give me the points.
Chargers are going to cover, especially after what they did to the Browns and what the Ravens just did to the Titans. Chargers cover.
The New England Patriots traveling to Soldier Field, getting 3 points on the road against the Bears. Rob Gronkowski is not going to play in this game. He didn't travel with the Patriots. So, but with that being the case and the Bears coming off the bye, they weren't coming off the bye. They came off a disappointing loss in Miami last week. My bad. That was a disappointing loss. I think they come home and they play pretty convincing football over the Patriots. The Patriots have not won a road game this year. So give me the Bears to win this one outright.
Wow, that's pretty bold. I'm going to pick the Patriots to cover. I just don't see the Bears bouncing back with that. So I don't know what Khalil Mack's status is. I really don't. I think Khalil Mack has been designated as questionable, but I feel like he's a big difference maker in this game. I mean, if he's there, it's going to suck because not only are the Packers without Rob Gronkowski, who they use as a blocker, they're without Marcus Cannon. Their starting right tackle has been one of the better tackles this year. So Khalil Mack plays, I could actually totally see the Bears winning. But right now, I have the Patriots covering.
Bills at Colts. Indy's getting 7.5 at Lucas Oil Stadium. I wanted to go with the Bills here, but I just don't trust a guy making his first start off the street. Give me the Colts to win in a blowout.
I'm going to have the Bills plus 7.5. I think that they could keep it within 7.5. I don't really have anything else to say. This is basically, for me, it's like looking at like the who's fighting for the bottom, who's getting the number 1 draft pick. That's basically what this game looks like to me.
The Raiders may have something to say about that as well. Until then, the Lions, or the Cardinals for that matter, Detroit coming off the bye in Miami, Detroit getting 3 on the road. I'm not a believer in Brocktober continuing this week. Give me the Lions to win coming out of the bye.
It's Brocktober, baby. Dolphins all the way. Dolphins are winning out right here. And I want to bet money on this. I want to go to Vegas and just drop money on this game. Not because I believe in it, but for the memes, because it's Osweiler, man. So Dolphins win outright.
And by the way, I have Lions covering, not just winning. So I have them winning by 3 or more points. Vikings at Jets. This one is kind of maybe an underrated game because Darnold has been impressive the last couple weeks. But I think the Vikings will snuff this one out. They'll cover in this one. Give me the 3.5 points for the Vikings.
I'm going to have the Vikings covering as well. I just think the Vikings are the better team, plain and simple.
Carolina Panthers traveling to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Philly's getting 5 points at home. Have they righted the ship? Possibly. I think they'll win this one. The Panthers still haven't won a road game this year, but I think they keep it close. Give me the Panthers plus 5 in this one. They'll keep it close.
I spent the most time contemplating this game out of all of the games because I at first had the Eagles covering, then I had the Panthers plus 5, then I had the Panthers winning, and then I went back to the Panthers plus 5. This game just felt weird because the Eagles righted the ship against the Giants, and that's what really threw me off. I wanted to say that the Eagles fixed everything, but it was against the Giants, and they're terrible. So I ultimately flipped it all the way around and went with the Panthers winning outright. I think that the Panthers may show the Eagles' true colors here. I think that the Eagles are middle of the pack team right now. They're not. They might be just out on the edge of the playoffs. But yeah, Panthers win.
Browns and Buccaneers. This game is not one that I would touch if I were a betting man. The Buccaneers getting 3.5 at home. I'll take the Bucs to cover, but I'm not confident about it.
I'm going to take the Bucs to cover too. I mean, maybe with their new defensive coordinator, they'll perform better. Good luck. The Bucs cover.
Texans and Jaguars, two teams that I'm still not quite sure I understand fully. Jacksonville's a 4-point favorite at home. Give me the Jaguars, lay the points, just because I believe in their team a little bit more from top to bottom.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Jaguars covering. It's been 2 bad games for Bortles, which means he's probably going to have a decent game now. I can't see him having 3 bad games in a row. I mean, actually, I can see it, but, I don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to say Jaguars cover here.
This is the most interesting game of the week in my mind. The Saints traveling to Baltimore. The Ravens 2.5-point favorites at home. The only team Drew Brees has not beaten in his illustrious NFL career. I think he's going to come up a bit short in this one. I think the Ravens are a very good football team right now, and I think they're going to win this one. And pretty close, but they'll cover a 2.5-point spread.
Yeah, it's incredible. He's beaten 31 teams. Obviously, he beat the Saints when he was on the Chargers, but I'm going to pick the Saints to win outright here. I think that it's mostly hope. I'm hoping for the Saints to win outright here. As I don't know if we mentioned it, but if the Saints win, and conversely, obviously, the Ravens lose, and then also if the Chiefs win, meaning that the Bengals lose, the Steelers go to the front of the division on their bye week. They get to be number 1 in the division if both those things happen. So I think for this week, since we don't got Steelers football, we're both going to be Saints and Chiefs fans for 1 week, but yeah, for the game, Saints win outright. It's what I'm hoping for.
Los Angeles Rams at the 49ers in Santa Clara. Rams getting 9.5. I contemplated Niners plus 9.5 because the division is so weird, but I don't know. This just seems like a blowout to me. Todd Gurley's playing at an MVP level, so give me the Rams in this one to lay the points.
See, this game, my buddy was using this for his survival football game for the Rams cover. I wasn't very happy with it because I thought back to last year. I don't know if you remember, but the Rams and 49ers, the Rams were just starting to establish themselves, and this was supposed to be an easy game against the 49ers last year, and it ended up being a barn burner, 42-39, with the Rams just winning. And as I said now, I think I said it 3 weeks in a row, I hate this division. This division doesn't make sense. This division doesn't do things correctly when they verse each other. So I'm going to pick the 49ers plus 9.5. There's no way they're winning, but I feel like this game is going to be closer than that, especially with CJ playing actually okay football right now.
All right, Cowboys at the Redskins. This is an interesting matchup because both teams are in the mode of winning one and losing one. And because the Redskins were on a bye, both teams are set to, I believe, lose this week. Yes. So something's got to give here. It's a pick'em game. It's either way. I'm going to take the home team in Washington to win this one. I'm not super confident either, though. So I guess, what do you think?
I'm going to take the Cowboys to win outright. I wasn't very confident in this game either. I'm just going to think that the Cowboys ride off of last week's success and just barely inch out a win against the Redskins here.
Sunday Night Football, you talked about it a second ago. Bengals at Chiefs. Chiefs second week in a row. This time they'll be at home. They're getting 6 points at Arrowhead. I'll take the Chiefs to cover. I think they're going to come back in a big way. And the Bengals, I think they're a good football team, but I think the Steelers kind of exposed them for not being a great team.
Oh, yeah, I think the Chiefs cover here as well. The Bengals' pass defense still isn't that great. They're still giving up a lot of yards, and Kansas City has excelled at getting so many yards through the passing game. I think that the Chiefs cover here.
Wrapping up the week, the Giants at the Falcons. The Falcons getting 4 points, which kind of surprised me. I am not a believer in the Giants at all anymore. I don't know where this team is, but it's not in a good place. Let's leave it that way. Falcons are going to cover. Give me the points.
I'm going to agree with you. The Falcons are going to cover. The Giants are also in the competition for the worst team in football, trying to get that number 1 overall pick. So I am going to pick the Falcons to cover here.
Alrighty, and we'll have another episode shortly talking a little bit about the bye, but In the meantime, just your quick thoughts for this team at the bye.
I feel okay. I feel way better. If you asked me this 3 weeks ago, obviously you actually knew what I was saying. I was saying this team is 8-7-1. It's definitely improved. I didn't think that this team was going to be able to turn around with how bad they were in so many different areas, but they really started. There's still room for improvement. Don't take me as this team is perfect right now, but I feel good about them. I feel okay going forward, but this was supposed to be the easy stretch. That's the problem. Now we're about to enter the hard stretch where we have to verse the Bengals again, the Saints, the Chargers,
in Baltimore.
Baltimore again. It's just a bunch of hard games, so it's going to be rough. This was supposed to be the easy stretch, and the Steelers didn't do as great as we would hope coming through this one.
Yeah, we were hoping at least 4 or 5 wins. The Steelers finished with only 3. But I think the next 2 games are going to be huge because they're hosting the Browns. You finish up the schedule against the Browns, and then you have another game against the Ravens at Baltimore. That's probably the biggest game of the season, at least at this point. And then you've got one more division game at the end of the year. So the fate of this team could very well, at least for the most part, be realistically decided with how they perform the next 2 weeks. So obviously a lot going forward. But this is a good time to have the bye, if I'm going to be honest with you. It gives you a chance to kind of tune things up in the home game against Cleveland going into next week. And then you can go into Baltimore with everything on the line, as it was meant to be. Am I right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good time to get the rest and then go into that game against the Browns next week.
Alrighty. That'll wrap things up for today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, feel free to email the show at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. And be sure to check us out on our website listed in the description below this video / audio file. Check us out. And we always appreciate feedback. If you ever have any questions or you just want to tell us how we're doing, something we can do to improve, we always appreciate it. So thank you as always for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Have a terrific day.
Goodbye.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below. Oh.